Welcome to the Wildspire Conversations podcast. You get to be a fly on the wall for my intimate coaching sessions with inspiring entrepreneurs who are changing the world. I'm your host, Stephanie Benedetto Padovani, wild creation coach and soul storyteller at The Awakened Business, where I help coaches, therapists, and creative entrepreneurs craft an irresistible message and broadcast it to the world. In each conversation, I'll ask curious, playful questions, challenging us to connect with the deeper purpose and joy of what we're here to do. We may experience one or more of the following: articulation of their soul's message and mission, life-changing stories, insights, ahas, and wisdom nuggets, ideas for new products, services, or businesses. Truth is, I have no idea exactly what will emerge, because there's no agenda for this conversation. Anything can happen when we step into the unknown of infinite creativity, and that's where we're going to play. It's time to get Wildspired. My podcast guest today is Ron Dawson. By day, Ron is a brand marketer and content strategist for media and tech companies, as well as high-profile artists. By night, he dons his black suit and writes about lighter things in life like race relations, politics, and faith. He's the author of the satirical nonfiction/fictional hybrid Dungeons and Durags, one black nerd's epic quest of self-discovery, race relations, and crisis of faith in Trump's America. He is self-publishing it on Medium, where his writing has been curated to such topics as marketing, race, writing, culture, and productivity. I highly recommend that you get your hands on his book, read it, go to Medium, follow his writing. It's highly, highly enjoyable in many ways and informational. A little known fact about Ron is that he used to dance on a semi-professional Lindy Hop dance troupe, where his signature move was leapfrogging over his partner's shoulders and landing in the splits. Ron has been in my orbit for some years, ever since back in the days when I was in the wedding industry. He was a filmmaker, and I was doing wedding marketing, education, and coaching. When the world went crazy with social unrest, the conversation about race, and the call to make a difference, his voice has been a beacon in the darkness for me. His arguments are well-researched. He approaches discussions with patience, and yet he brings a fierce passion for change. Now, while Ron in this introduction refers to himself as more of a dark knight than a Superman, because the message he brings is, in his own words, hard around the edges, I personally think that he really models compassion and a willingness to communicate. And it's people like Ron who are helping people like me, white people like me, to better understand what's happening in our community, what needs to happen, and how we can wake up and become an ally for the change that's going to make a difference for all of us. Ron also has a lovely, quirky sense of humor, which I greatly appreciate. So even though there's a bit of a wake-up call in his message, he also delivers it with a lightness sprinkled in throughout. I was so excited for this conversation. And not only did Ron bring a really cool question for us to ponder that opened up all kinds of ideas that will potentially help him fast track the process of turning his book into a movie and series. That was so much fun for me to be a part of, participating in. He also really helps me by answering some questions about white privilege and how we talk about it. This is a really powerful conversation. I invite you to enjoy. I hope you like it as much as I did. Ron, thank you so very much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Stephanie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, this has been a conversation I've been looking forward to since I rediscovered you.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, I was like, I got to talk to Ron. I got to talk to him. I need the full Ron experience.
Right. Well, we'll see if we can handle it, Steph.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Even better if I can't.
Right. Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
just be overwhelmed with joy.
yeah,
So I would love to know, what would you most like to get out of this conversation today?
yeah. I think for me, having a good understanding, I don't even know if understanding is the right word, but I think the biggest challenge that I have now is balancing like the kind of writing and the kind of art that I want to create that I'm super passionate about, with the kind of work that, and this is an age-old story, kind of work that pays the bills.
Mm.
Um, Now, the thing is, the work that pays the bills, I generally like. So, I like to say by day, I'm a brand and content marketer. So I work with media companies and tech companies and some high profile artists to help them with content marketing. So blogging, podcasting. Some of my clients, I still do video. For about 17 years, I ran a video production company full time, and then I started my last job where I was a managing editor and content marketer for a SaaS company out of New York. Then earlier this year, right before the COVID quarantine, I struck out on my own, and then the COVID quarantine hit, which is a great time to start a business. Hashtag just kidding. Um, but so through the various, contexts over the years, I've done like 3 different podcasts in the visual arts community. I've been a big blogger. The last company I worked for, that was a company that serviced the film and video world. So I've been able to, create a decent sized network and audience through all of those. And so, I'm able to get clients and grow my business. And I genuinely enjoy that work. Like the kind of blog posts that I write for my clients or that I help get written for my clients, or the podcasts I produce for them, or the videos that I make for some of my video clients that I still do video work for, I generally enjoy. But, a few years ago or last year, I finished a satirical memoir that kind of talks about essentially delves into the journey I've had over the past few years as a Black man, and having essentially both a racial identity crisis and a crisis of faith over the past few years, as a result of Donald Trump um, becoming president. And regardless of where your audience sits on the political spectrum, that's where I am, and that's the effect that it had on me. And so I wrote this memoir. It's sort of like a comedic memoir, and the process of writing that and going through the process of doing a lot of additional writing on Medium has awakened this. I've always been a writer. Like, I've been blogging since
Mm.
2006, and I actually wrote a book with my then wife in 2009 called Refocus: Cutting Edge Strategies to Evolve Your Video Business. So I've always been a writer. I've written for industry magazines and blogs and stuff, but I had always thought of myself or self-identified first as a filmmaker
Mm.
who did some writing. But now I identify as a writer that still does. I'm still like a cinephile. I'm still passionate about filmmaking. I like that, but I see myself as a writer first. So I think, long-winded answer to your question is, balancing those in this time, um, and feeling good about whatever time I spend on each. If that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because the first thing that I thought of was, what's balance? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, it's funny you say that, because one of my clients a long time ago was, uh, Creative Live.
Mm-hmm.
And one of their top photographers was doing sort of like a work-life balance video, and I was producing a promo for her. And one of the things she talks about is that there is no such thing as work-life balance. And I
Mm-hmm.
forgot the exact terminology she used, but that's a common term that a lot of people use, like balancing work and life. And the truth is, work and life are really integrated. So it's not so much striking a balance as it is creating an integration that's healthy, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all those kind of things.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how would you know that it was a healthy integration?
Uh, I think I would know it's a healthy integration. Ideally, like if there was no guilt or anxiety when working on one versus the other.
Mm-hmm.
So like when I'm working on my traditional client work, like even though that's work that's paying the bills and that's the work that I need to expand in order to continue to sustain, I sometimes get antsy because I feel like, oh, I want to put out another Medium article, or there's some more promotion I want to do for my book or whatever. But then when I'm working on my book or promotion for my book, the book is already written, or I've been publishing like 2 chapters a week online to Medium. I'm working on that. Or if I'm doing any other kind of writing that I'm really passionate about, then I either feel guilty that I'm not doing more marketing, or I'm not doing the bookkeeping, or all the kind of things you need to do when you run a business. If you don't yet have a staff to kind of handle that. And so balance for me would be, I'm in each case, I don't have those feelings. Like I'm not feeling antsy to do my personal work when I'm doing client work. And then I'm not feeling guilty when I'm doing personal work that I'm not doing client work.
So here's the really cool thing about that.
Yeah.
Is that it doesn't matter how much you're working on either of your passions here, your
Right.
traditional business or your passion projects, right? It doesn't matter how much you're working on them. What really matters then is the thinking that looks real, or the beliefs that you have about it. So it's like, so if you could, which means completely in your control, like totally in your control. Now, I don't mean this like controlling your thinking, because I don't really think that we can.
Yeah.
We have some influence maybe occasionally, but more often than not, I'm like, where the hell did that thought come from?
Right.
No idea. So what would it be like? Like, what would your week be like ideally, if you could do it any way you wanted and there were no worries about how, let's just say you can make it up, you're making the money you want. What would your life look like?
Oh yeah. I think the question to that is easy. And it's an old refrain, I think, for a lot of creative artists. But for me, it would look like me being a showrunner and executive producer on an animated version of my book, and like in a writer's room once a week working on scripts and storylines, and meeting with animators, and perhaps talking to studio execs about like another season or a live action version of the book, that kind of thing. And then speaking, I love speaking. I used to do a lot. I used to do not a lot of it, but a decent amount of it, back in the late 2000s, early 2010s, or whatever. And like at filmmaker conferences and photography conventions and things like that. And so speaking, I love speaking. So speaking to crowds on topics related to the issues that my book covers. So that would sort of like be the perfect world, the ideal world.
I love how fast that came to you. You're like, oh, I know what it is.
Yeah.
That's really super cool. So are you doing that with part of your week or part of your time?
Yeah. My 2 best friends are in the biz, as they say, and they have they have a pretty decent network of people in the industry. And so as of this recording, we're currently working on like a pitch deck to make and present to some people that they know, and we'll see where that goes. And the idea is that even though the contents of the book are evergreen, like I feel like you could read it 10 years from now and it would still be germane, and I think it would still speak to you. It is rooted in events that are currently happening or have been happening in the past few years. And so particularly this year, it's germane. And so it's right to like present to a studio or some other content provider that's looking to capitalize on this kind of content.
Whoa. So as you're saying this, Ron, like I have
Mm-hmm.
this sense of like, hit it fast, hit it hard, do it now. Like
Mm-hmm.
and not in a sense of desperation, but like there's
Right.
a lot of fire for
Yes.
you personally.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of fire collectively. There are
Right.
people who will get behind this
Mm-hmm.
because the topic has our attention right now. I think you have a really unique perspective,
Mm-hmm.
um, coming from, wow. Yeah. I mean, for me anyway, personally, I don't know if everyone would agree, encountering your story just in the bits that I have here and there,
Mm-hmm.
it's so compelling because of it's like the multiple disillusionment
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
happened with around race, around faith. I mean,
Right.
these are like core identity issues.
Oh, yeah, for
Hence
sure.
the black existential crisis, as you call it. Right? Like,
Very good for you. You remember. Yeah, nice.
oh my
Yeah.
God, how could I not?
Yeah.
It's very clever. I also
Yeah.
remembered Blurred.
Yes. That one I did not make up, but yes, that is a black nerd or blurred is what I am.
That's that's a thing. I have
Right. Yeah.
recently come to terms with my own nerdhood.
Oh, yeah.
I've been
How are
like
you a
a
nerd?
nerd in hiding. I'm just really geeky. I don't.
Like,
It's
to what extent?
okay.
Not that
Lar-
I'm turning the microphones or anything,
no,
but
no, it's okay. LARPing,
oh, no, no,
live
that's
action role playing,
yeah, 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 totally.
Dungeons and Dragons. Definitely. It's been a while, but
Yeah,
I
that
love
was
to
my
like
thing.
put on plays and like do role playing and
That's
like,
awesome.
okay, that's
Yeah,
primary.
yeah,
So anyway.
yeah. Totally. Well, as I think you probably know, considering you remember Black Existential, the name of my book is Dungeons and Durags, one Black nerd's epic quest of self-identity, um, uh, self-discovery, racial identity, and crisis of faith in Trump's America. And so, Dungeons, obviously based on the title, Dungeons and Dragons, has played its role. I used to, as I talk about in the book, in junior high, which they call middle school nowadays. Back when I was a kid, it was called junior high. In junior high, I used to play D&D with my Asian friends in the hallway outside the classroom. So like all the cool kids are in the quad, and here's me, like, you know, uh, these three other Asian dudes with our little dungeon D&D campaign. And so that was, if you remember those scenes in like the first season of Stranger Things, where the kids are
Huh?
playing
Uh-huh.
D&D in the basement, that was me.
Yeah.
I was the black kid. I was the black kid. And it's funny because like in that show, the black kid, his first girlfriend is a white girlfriend. So
Mm-hmm.
that also kind of parallels my life because I've always had non-black girlfriends. Anyway, that's not the point of this episode or this podcast interview. I don't think it is.
Sure. It
I
is
don't think it
now.
is.
You've
It is now.
changed the whole trajectory, Ron. I don't
Right.
know what we're gonna do.
That's right.
So the question that comes to me, and this is honestly just around curiosity,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I don't know, like, what would it take for you to be able to put all of your focus on this project, like right now?
That's a good question because so here's one of the things that I've come to grips with is, for since 2012, I have lived and preached not taking on debt. So, one of the things that, before our call, we talked about how I'm recently amicably divorced, and, my ex and I had like a beautiful, conscious uncoupling ceremony, release ceremony in
Hmm.
Spain, and we remained very supportive of one another. And, in every marriage that comes apart, there's, takes two to tango.
Mm-hmm.
But, I've come to a place where a significant part of what caused stress in our marriage falls on my shoulders, and I can own that. And one of the things was we got into a significant amount of debt, like early in our marriage, and we eventually paid it off, largely with like, she had gotten a job at Apple for a while, and then due to a terrible accident she had, we got some settlement money from that. And so, I think, at one point when it was earlier in my business, and this was like shortly around the 2008 time, and it was hard. Even before that, at one point I had made the promise to go back and get a quote unquote real job if the business didn't go where we wanted to go. And at the point where I should have done that. At the time, I was still wanting to stay an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
So I had made this promise that I broke and caused resentment, which is something that, you should never do. And so we eventually got out of debt, and we swore never to get back in debt. And so, once we got out of it, we were very adamant about always paying off our credit cards. And, for the 2.5 years leading up to us separating, we were traveling throughout Europe and Canada. And we used credit cards to, pay for Airbnb and for points and miles and stuff like that. But again, we were always paying it off. And so in this new era, I'm getting to your answer, in this new era where like I'm starting this new business right when quarantine hits, I had some pretty decent client gigs that were lining up that got canceled because businesses were either their revenue was going down because of, the quarantine, or, a number of my clients are video related companies. And so when you can no longer make videos with people because you're not supposed to meet with people, those businesses had changed some of their direction, which means the work I was going to help them with as a content marketer totally dried up. And so I was in this place where I was on path to do a pretty decent amount of work as a freelancer. Money dried up, and I had to start taking on a little bit of debt. Nothing as close to what it was before, and I still keep it under wraps. But there was a bit of shame I had, and having to take on, debt. And it's funny. So my credit rating has been like over 800 for the past, I don't know how many years, which is an excellent rating. And then recently it dropped to 775, which is still technically like an excellent rating, but it still says excellent. But like I was really like, for the first time in I don't know how many years, it was under 800, and it kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. And like, I don't even have any plans to buy a house anytime soon or anything like that. But I don't know if it was the competitor in me or what, but it's like, what the F? Like, and one of the reasons why he dropped is because I was carrying on a little bit of debt. And it kind of sucks, Stephanie, because here's the thing. I feel like I got 2 dings for something that is one and the same. So like, one of my dings is for carrying a debt balance. And then another ding is for having less available credit. But those are 2 in the same things. Like, if you have a debt balance, that by definition means you have less available credit. So I kind of felt like that was not fair. Anyway, all that to say is, I was dealing with a little bit of shame and having to take on debt again, even though by all stretches of the imagination, the amount that I have is really insignificant. But there was still that amount of shame, because I felt like, for 8 years, I've had this record of no debt, always paying it off. And then my credit rating going down or whatever. And then I just came to this point where I felt like, you know what, Ron, the country is in record level unemployment, and businesses left and right are closing shop. Businesses that are billion-dollar businesses are closing shop. You don't need to feel shame if your business is taking a hit too, right? Like, and so I think once I accepted that, I got to a point where it's like, in order to get to where I want to go, it is okay if in this moment it means taking in more debt than I would normally, even though I am, again, if at all possible, never using debt in order to grow a business. And so, to the extent possible, every extra penny I get goes towards paying that debt down. But, to the extent that I use my credit cards in order to pay for things for my business or pay for things to live, not feeling shame about it, and realizing that, hey, this is a season that lots of people are in. I'm not the only one. And so I think to get to that point that you're saying is, it's a matter of really being able to set aside the dedicated time necessary, like, to get my book to a place where I can make a presentation. I'm working with an animator where I'm kind of like, I'm trading my marketing skills for his animation. This is a dude, like, he does work for Pixar, and so he's like top of the top, and he's like creating a book cover and all this stuff. And so working with him so we can put together this visual deck, and then investing in that time and pushing through any feelings of anxiety or guilt or whatever, if it means taking away some time from promoting my content marketing business or doing bookkeeping and that kind of thing.
So can you do it? Like, how much time would you need, you think, to get your book to that place where it's ready to really present it and just take it to the next level?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's you say that because like today, I'm not sure when this podcast is going to air, but today I have committed to getting my book to that place. So I've been, so the book is like just under 80,000 words, and I've been posting 2 chapters a week online on Medium. And as I post them, I kind of edit them down from the book. And then when I edit them, I post them on Medium. So essentially I make them Medium ready so that they're nice and tight. And it's been a great learning experience actually, because when I was writing the book originally, you kind of think of each chapter differently when you're writing in the context of one book. But as I've been posting the chapters essentially as individual blog posts on Medium, I have to think more along, okay, how will somebody read this if they just come to it by itself? What's going to make it snappy and make the person want to turn the page, for lack of a better word? And so that process has actually made the book itself tighter and more enjoyable. And so I was going through that process 2 chapters a week. Now I've committed to like just finishing the book today, tomorrow by the latest, and so that it's ready like in an ebook format. And then from there, determining, okay, which chapters from the book do we want to create sort of like an animatic for. So like in the animation world, we don't have a full-blown animation. You kind of have like, it's almost like a semi-animated storyboard where you have scenes, and then you maybe have like air bubbles and stuff like that for people talking and music in order to kind of give a feel of what the series would be like. And so once like the book is done, that would be the next stage, and committing to getting that over the next couple of weeks.
So you're not far from it at all, from the completion of this. It's coming really soon.
So my goal is, like right now, again, as we record this, the country is in the middle of one of the biggest racial unrests and upheaval in years. Then literally the entire world is, literally the entire world is protesting, all the backdrop of a global pandemic. But in the I swear,
that needs to be in your animation.
It's like like a few months ago, I was joking that it feels like we're in a Stephen King novel. And that was before like the whole George Floyd and everything. And then on top of this global pandemic, a crazy president. Oh, let's add now worldwide protests over racial unrest. But because of all the racial unrest, like the top 10 nonfiction books on Amazon are all books related to, race relations. I'm like, I got to get in there and get mine in there somehow. So that's what I'm working on.
Is it okay? Would it be fun if we just kind of riffed a little bit on how you could make it happen faster, like how you might be able to do this thing?
Sure. Which one specifically? Getting to
both, all of it. Like,
sure.
Because I have some ideas came to me when you were talking, and I just feel
I would love to hear. Yeah.
I wouldn't say this with I don't get this with everyone I talk to, but I get like there's all this energy for it right now, and I suspect that part of the reason, part of the reason you feel antsy is because of that. There's so much momentum. There's so much like it. This is a funky way to say it. I do have a woo side, right? So like it wants to move through you. Like it wants to, wherever the creativity comes from, I don't know. It's like, it's just like ripe.
Yeah.
And my feeling is I talk to you is like, oh my God, I want to help. I want to do this. Like but this is me. This is what I'm experiencing.
Sure.
So what came to me is like, what if you were to crowdfund this thing or part of it? You've thought of this, right? You thought of this.
I have. It's funny you say that, because when I was in funny enough, when we were in Salzburg last year, around October, I think it was around October or August. It was sometime last fall is when I actually finally completed the book, and that's when I started reaching out to lit agents, and I'm still to an extent reaching out to literary agents. And my plan was, if I didn't find a lit agent by a certain amount of time, that I would like crowdfund the book. So do something like on Kickstarter or whatever. So I actually had made like a little Kickstarter video way back in when I was in Salzburg last fall. So that has crossed my mind. And one of the things I'm using the ebook for is, like, if people buy it and it generates revenue, that would be awesome. But my primary goal of it is to be more of a strategic marketing strategy for building an audience for whatever the series would be. So it would be great if people buy the ebook, but the more people who get a hold of the book and spread it, the better. So I would rather have it spread for free among people to build up this audience, to say to a potential company that would want to create a series, we've built up this audience. And so I think crowdfunding would be like, I think, a good opportunity maybe to help create that animatic, right? To whether it's, getting people to create original music, or being able to pay the animator that I've been working with, so that, the amount of work he does now is, on par with the amount of marketing I give him. And so, like, maybe if we raise some money, I can actually pay him something to do a little bit extra work in making it animatic. I mean, he really likes and believes in the project. So I think a crowdfunding idea is definitely something that's crossed my mind in terms of being able to have the bandwidth to spend more time on it.
Yeah. And so that came up. I'm like, whoa, I see, like, I'll donate. I'll be the first. I mean, I probably won't be the first. I'm sure you have other fans, but I'm like, I will pay, please. Like, I'll fund it. I will. I'm happy to.
Yeah.
And I wondered too, this is what came up in conjunction. So you've got all of these assets and skills and experience. What if there was a pivot that let you align all of this? So in other words, instead of doing the traditional brand and content marketing type of things that you were doing, you pivoted to help people around all of these topics. So in other words, like, you start speaking and educating and talking again about your book, which would build an audience for the book series, or you start helping people to facilitate these kinds of conversations, or you
I like that idea.
Or you start helping people to create content that's aligned around this conversation. And all of it is like about, I mean, it's so aligned with,
I totally love that idea.
Straight line, right?
I gotta write this on now.
Yeah. You're going to get the recording of this too, by the way.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll have to go back and listen. I love that idea. And it's weird because I consider myself, it's funny. Like, I consider myself, I mean, I do content marketing. That's what I do. And I consider myself like a savvy guy. Marketing. But it's funny how it never even occurred to me to do something like that. Like, and I love those. And those are things that companies are dealing with now. Like,
yes,
D&I.
It up. Yeah. And it's not you know how to do this. Like, I could tell talking to you, like, you've got this down. Like, you get the strategy. You know what has to happen. You know how to market and promote. It's like, bing, bing, bing. Just connect these two things and you've got it. Like, leverage your crowdfund grows your audience. Your work with, you just direct it, content marketing around topics of racism, dealing with, all these topics, equality, blah, blah, blah. Pivot. Everything's so lined up, and it's going to feed the fire. So in other words, there's no more sitting around antsy wondering, like, oh, I really should be working. You are working on it. Like, all of this ties in.
Right. Yeah. Are you allowed to cuss in your podcast?
Yes, you can.
Yeah. Fucking A. That's an awesome idea. I've been reticent because I wasn't sure what your rating, if you had an E next to your iTunes rating.
I think it's just a matter of time before I blow that, so you might as well right away get it out of the way.
Because, what I love about the idea is that it's so funny because I've been creating like these vlogs relating to ways of explaining white privilege, because one of the things that I write about a lot is white privilege, and one of the problems with talking about that is, understandably so, for a lot of people, for a lot of white people, when they hear that term, they're immediately standoffish because it feels like it feels like a slap in the face to any work that they've done to achieve their direction. For some people, they have like bought into some of the narratives by more conservative speakers and thought leaders like Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson, who say that white privilege is a myth. And there are all these ways of really understanding what it is and understanding that all of us have some type of privilege that's tied in to some demographic we belong to. Like I have male privilege, right? Even though I'm a Black man, there's a certain level of privilege I have as a man that women don't have. Like the example I always use is when I'm jogging, and even if it's late at night, I used to not have any fear. It's a little bit different now in this world, but as a Black man jogging. But for the most part, as a man, I've never had fear jogging at night, even wearing earbuds and listening to music, because I'm a man. You know, if I walk into an empty parking lot, I don't get nervous. If I hear footsteps behind me, I don't get nervous. Whereas I've talked to a number of women friends who, and maybe you can relate to this too, that for a woman, you are very aware of your surroundings. If you're walking into an empty parking lot, there's a certain sense of heightened anxiety that rises. And so that is a privilege that I have, that I don't have to go through the world like that. And so part of what I've been doing is creating these vlogs to try to use movie and TV show examples and analogies to kind of explain white privilege in a way that's accessible. And, you know, I've been doing all these vlogs just out of, I wouldn't say for fun, but just out of natural. Like I don't use them as marketing or anything. I just do them. And hearing you talk about this idea, it's like, wow, I already have like a half dozen or more of these videos that I've created that could be part of like a package that I sent to the company. Hey, this is something that I talk about. If you need me to talk to your company about, you know, to your D&I committee or, you know, diversity and inclusion committee about, you know, how do you explain white privilege, or how do you deal with race relations? You know, here are some examples of me talking about it. I would love to talk to your company. And it never even occurred to me to do stuff like that. I love that idea. And you're right, because it's totally aligned with, you know, what I'm doing now. And
you've got to pivot anyway. You might as well pivot that way.
Right. Right. No, it's totally, yeah. And if I'm going to, because it's a matter of, right, that if I have to do marketing, it's a matter of, you know, am I marketing to more, you know, video and visual arts and tech companies to do content marketing for them? Or if I'm reaching out to these companies, instead of reaching out to them to do, you know, to do podcasting for them or blogging for them, say, hey, these are the times that are going on, to the extent you need somebody who even understands your industry, because I'm a filmmaker. So if I'm reaching out to visual arts companies, whatever, I can not only speak their language as a visual artist myself, I can also speak to this idea of, okay, how do we use our talent as an artist to kind of address issues of race relations. And that would be not only more fulfilling for me, it would also, like you said, align with what I'm doing.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I'm going to start working on that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or today, like, even.
Is there anything that will stop you from that?
No, I mean, it comes to choices, right? Because, you know, the marketing that I've been doing for my freelance business is, hey, you know, I have this experience. I worked for this, you know, well-known SaaS company in the video world, doing management as a managing editor and as a content marketer. I can now take my experience for this, you know, venture capital-backed SaaS company and do it for you. Like, that's where my marketing has been. But like you said, it's a pivot. If I pivot to, hey, here's something that here's a service I can provide to your company that lots of companies are talking about, which is how to talk about race relations, how to use the talents that your audience has to talk about race relations. How can I help you? Like, if you're a company that provides visual arts related services to filmmakers, whatever, how can I help you help them tell those kind of stories? And so, it's a pivot in the message, you know, that I would give. And, which makes a lot of sense too, because I think about like a friend and colleague of mine, his name is Brett Culp. He would be an awesome person to interview. But he is someone, and, you know, he used to be in a similar industry. He was a high profile wedding filmmaker for years. And then he kind of pivoted to become a documentary filmmaker. And now he's kind of pivoted again to he's still doing documentary filmmaking, but he's doing a lot of keynote speaking.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very positive individual. Like every time I watch one of his videos, I cry. But he's been like a close friend of mine for like almost as long as I've been in the video business almost. But I've been inspired by his journey because over the past few years, I've seen him do like this pivoting you're talking about and it kind of started out the same way. Like he was just doing like these vlogs on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I've noticed that he started doing more of them. And then I noticed that those kind of pivoted and turned into speaking engagements. Now, like he has a website that's geared towards his speaking career. And there was like, I used to say, and I've teased him about this where I kind of feel like I'm the Dark Knight to his Superman. Because his speaking, I mean, if any of your audience listens to him, his speaking and the topics that he addresses are extremely positive. Like it's all like super positive, and it's about the power of love and of inspiration. And it's very inspirational, like I said. And I kind of feel like a lot of my messaging I still is equally needed, but it's more hard hitting. It's harder on the edges. I'm forcing people to look at themselves in the mirror. I'm talking about provocative topics like white privilege. So I always tease him that I'm, because Batman, Superman is like the Boy Scout, and Batman is sort of like, the guy who gets a little bit dirty, get under his fingernails. And so I used to tease him that I'm the Dark Knight to his Superman. But when I think about your idea, I really love that.
Yeah, and just my personal experience of your message, one of the things that I love about it is that, like, I can feel you coming into the full power of your voice as a Black man, as a fully, and we got, did you hear that? That was the confirmation right there. Ding, 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 ding. It's like the angels are singing along like, oh.
Right. Yeah.
It goes. And I really mean that. That so stole my thunder, damn it.
Yeah.
But in other words, like there's power in what you're saying. And I also feel compassion. There's anger, and there's a desire to bring people together to talk about it. Both.
Yeah.
Like there's both. Like you can hold both. And I think that gives you, everyone has a voice in this if they choose to have it. And, it's kind of, we have to discover what that is. And to me, that's what it seems yours is. Now, some Black voices are just like sounding the alarm, and they're like, hey, wake up, wake the fuck up. It is time, it's way past time, and like, ouch, 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 like, we need it. We need that too. We need all of the voices. And yours is a wake up. And it's like, let's look at this and be real. And it's also got this, like, I remember one of your blog posts, you say, like, you're not wrong because you have white privilege.
Right.
You're wrong if you deny that you have white privilege.
Right. It's specifically having white privilege is not bad. Yes. Denying it is. Yeah.
Yes. And I think, good.
Yeah.
And I think I misquoted you.
No. You got the idea perfectly, though. And I think that's what gets lost. That's what gets lost. And it's unfortunate that the term privilege has to be used because privilege has a very specific connotation to it. And so I think that's why so many people, when they hear themselves being quote unquote accused of having white privilege, that it feels like for some of them, it feels like you're calling them a racist. Like if you say you have white privilege, it's like saying you're racist. And nothing could be further from the truth. It's saying there's a certain way that you live and work in the world, and you move through the world that where you have been afforded a privilege that people of color don't have. And like I said, it's the fact that you have it is not, you didn't do anything to get it other than be born. And it's not bad that you have it. It's not saying you have it is not calling you a racist, no more than a woman telling me I have male privilege is calling me, a sexist, right? And so I think that there is, but it's a hard thing to hear, even if you explain it. And so I love the idea of like putting myself out there as somebody who helps companies and people understand that.
Yeah. And Ron, would you be willing to help me with a little something that I'm
Yeah,
kind of thinking about?
sure.
Because
Yeah.
it's kind of a two-part here.
Right.
And so the first thing is that I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that for white people, when they hear the term white privilege, they're like, what do you mean? You're calling me a racist. It means that. And
Right.
that's not what you're saying first and foremost.
Right.
But what I'm seeing and what I'm noticing in myself and in other people is that we're making it into an identity issue unnecessarily. So I
Mm.
want to test this idea out with you
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
what you think. Because I've been
Yeah.
so nervous about talking about this because, God, I'm doing it now and I'm going to make it public.
No,
Ah,
I'm
okay.
glad. I'm glad. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can help me with this because I want to talk about this in a way that relieves the suffering that I see, which I believe enables us to activate, to be more engaged when we're not like beating ourselves up over things, you know?
Right. Right. Right.
So, as I sit with this, if I use the label, I have white privilege. Actually, that's a little easier because um, it's something I have. It's not something I am. But if
Mm.
I hear that
Yes.
and I think I am a racist, or
Mm.
because what if I recognize a racist thought?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And then I say, now I'm racist.
Yeah.
So when we think about our thoughts, the thoughts that we have, which are conditioned by our society, which are conditioned by systems, which are conditioned by parents and authority figures, and, like they're thoughts that we have, they're not who we are. And
Mm-hmm.
they change and they move, and we can learn to ignore them and choose other thoughts, right? Like,
Right.
in
Right.
other words, if I notice that, like, oh God, I just, clutched my purse when I was walking across the parking lot because I saw a black man.
Sure.
And I'm like, and I notice it, which is really good, first and foremost, that I noticed
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I don't have to go into, I am therefore racist.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed it. I can choose something different. It's not my
Right.
identity. It's conditioned thinking. It's not me. It's this thinking that I have that comes
Right.
from like our society and racism. And I've been trying to find a way to talk about this because I think once it's not a judgment on me, it's like, wow, of course I had that thought because that's what my mom taught me. That's what my dad taught me. That's what my teachers taught me. And now I know differently
Mm-hmm.
and I'm learning differently. I can be aware and I can choose something different. And it
Right.
doesn't
Right.
mean that I'm a bad person, you know?
Right. Right.
Now I can talk about it more and I can acknowledge it and I can say like, okay, how can I be, what else can I choose here? But I have to like be willing to sit with that and see it in myself first.
Yes.
Is that making sense? What comes up for you around that?
Well, two things come up. One, the idea of recognizing it, and I think that's huge because I think one of the issues that people in marginalized groups have is the lack of empathy and compassion that people not in the groups have. And I think if people who are in the ruling demographic, as I like to say, if they're able to notice those things and then use that recognition as a way to channel empathy for the people
Mm,
who are in that group. And so again, I always like to use myself as an example because I don't want to come across as holier than thou. You know, those are challenges I've had when attempting to be an ally for women, right?
mm,
And
mm,
so there are certain things that I have either said, even though I 100% consider myself an ally for women and for women's causes. I've had women friends either call me on certain things I've said that either were ignorant or were insensitive because I don't think of them that way, the way a woman would. And so if I'm cavalier about a certain topic, a certain woman could say, hey, Ron, let me give you a better way of talking about that. Or if I have a certain way of explaining how I think a woman should live in this world to be successful that maybe goes against was a more natural way for women to do things. I've had women say, hey, Ron, what if there's a way you could explain a woman to be successful that doesn't require her to deny her womanhood? And so there are
mm,
these kind of
mm,
things I've had to notice in myself that weren't, like you said, that have been systematized based
mm-hmm,
on the media and the images that we've had, like your fear, the example you gave of clutching your purse, that's a common example
mm-hmm,
because for years, what do you see on TV? You see black men as robbers and rapists and pimps and all this kind of thing. And so that's beat into your psyche for 30 plus years, right? And so it's the same thing for women. And, for me personally, again, when I think about being an ally for the LGBTQ plus community, like I'm a 50 plus year old Black man who grew up predominantly in the Christian church. By definition, I am going to have prejudices against like how I see my gay brothers and sisters, and how I look at that lifestyle in a way that is something that I have worked on changing, because I want to be an ally, because I recognize what it's like to be in a group, and I don't want things that I say or do to be offensive. Like, so like, for instance, if since we're being, vulnerable and open, I am still, for lack of a better word, struggling with using proper pronouns for people in that community. Like, I don't want to be offensive. And I always get frustrated when white people say to me, well, why do I have to call you this? Or why can't I use the N-word or whatever? It's like, hey, if it doesn't hurt you to call me Black, son of African American, or to capitalize a B, or whatever it is that you're not used to, but there's a shift happening in the world that makes this marginalized community feel better. And if it doesn't fucking cause you any consternation other than the fact that you have to break a habit, why not the F do it? And so for me, I'm not used to calling somebody they. But if someone wants to be called they, I am going to strive to call them they, because that's what they want to be called. And it doesn't hurt me other than I have to remember to do it. But at some point, I'll get used to doing it, right? And so I think, if you're not part of a marginalized community, and that community is telling you what they need to feel whole, to feel loved, to feel accepted, if that, first, if it rubs up against you, recognizing it, like you said, and being willing to acknowledge it, but then willing to, to come to meet them because you care about the other people. And so, I love that, love that you're recognizing it in yourself, and that's something that you are working through, because that's what makes this world a better place. When people can see the darkness in themselves, and that may be kind of a strong term to use, but if they can see something in themselves that they know can be better, that can make the world happier, that could express love, and they earnestly strive to reach that, that's what makes a world a better place.
Yeah. And I've noticed, and I will also speak for myself, and I think this is not uncommon. It's like, I'm in it. I'm willing, I'm listening. And all of a sudden I'm like, nope, I can't. And then I'm listening again. And then I'm like, nope, I can't. It's like one of these, and I get how in some moments it seems easier to push it away because I don't want to see that in myself. And that's, for me, it's that distinction and going, okay, it's not me, it's my thinking. It's not me. It's not locked into me. It's not how I have to be. It's maybe not even how I've been. It's just the thinking that will influence my behavior if I allow it to. But when I'm aware of it, I can choose something else. And, that's, thank you for letting me express that, because it's been percolating, and I'm
glad you did,
all day. And just to bring up like what we talked about before this call, like I was nervous about it because I want to have these conversations and I don't want to screw it up. And what I'm coming to is that I'm willing to show up and screw up.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
Yeah, show up and screw up, and then learn and listen and learn, and then do better the next time.
Yes. I think that is exactly what's needed. And I think oftentimes, and it's funny, I see this in myself sometimes. A perfect example, a great analogy is my running, right? Whenever you find yourself, a few years ago I started running, and when I first started, I was running every day, like regardless of what time of day, like when my family and I at the time were driving, whenever we reached our destination, no matter what time of night it was, I would get out and get my run in. I don't run now as much as I would like, or as much as I used to. And now when I get out, I notice that I'm huffing and puffing a little bit sooner. And so I'm feeling bad. And sometimes I don't run because I feel like I don't want to start running again until I can run at the level I was a few years ago. And sometimes, and I think sometimes people do the same thing with working out. For me, I also have the thing with meditation, and we're afraid to do something because we feel like we can't do it perfectly. And we don't want to even start it until we feel like we can do it perfectly versus
Right.
me just saying, you know
Right.
what, I'm going to start running again. And even if it's only twice a week and if it's only a mile instead of 2 or 3, that's better than nothing. And, you know, if, and in a sense, that's that fear of failing. Like, oh, I'm not, it's like protecting yourself from, in a weird way, it's like protecting yourself from failure. Like, I'm not failing at running every day if I don't run, which is kind of weird, right? Like if I don't run, if I don't try to run every
Yeah.
day, then I'm not a failure at running every day, right? But then I do become a failure at running because then I'm not running at all. So, yeah, I think it's kind of similar to what you were saying with what you were saying earlier about like screwing up. Like in your quest to not screw up, you don't have the conversations that you want to have that are important to have. And so you just realize, you know what, I'm going to screw up. You know what, I'm going to run, and I'm not going to be an everyday runner, but I'm going to run. And, you know, these conversations you want to have, they're important to have. They're never going to be they're never going to be had if I don't start having them. And sometimes like you screw up. And I love that mindset.
Yeah.
Good on you, Stephanie. Good on you.
Well, you know, I'm really trying to be as present as I can and recognizing that I'm not always going to be present. I'm going to get lost in the shit now and then.
Yeah,
But I'm coming back.
absolutely.
So my second question,
Mm-hmm.
if I may, and
Yeah,
like, is it
please.
okay? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
go for it. Yeah.
Because I think this is really good for me personally, but it's also good for other people. And,
Yeah.
you know, I am a person who takes in everything that I've got and like I integrate it. It goes into the mix.
Right,
And
right.
so I will share this with other people too, my
Yeah.
understanding as it grows. So there are some of my white friends,
Mm-hmm.
not many, but a few, who I've seen posting some kind of like some content that's trying to like, oh, here's the real truth about the origin of Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, oh God, oh
Yeah.
God. Now I'm at first I was like, I'm just taking this in. I don't know. I don't know what's happening. And now I'm like it's building up and I'm saying I need to say something because I can no longer be that person who stays silent.
Yes.
And as
Yes.
I see it, I can say it. And so I'm at this place of like, all right, now I'm willing to show up and screw up.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you.
I'd like to do it in a way that, you know, like what do you like could you like how can I speak to this in a way that opens communication and doesn't shut it down? So I know that
Yes.
first of all, I can manage my own emotions around it.
Right.
I can do that. You know, I'm not a hothead. I can be with people in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
situations and receive it and be with it. So
Right.
like, do you have thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. Because that is obviously a common occurrence for a lot of people nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Um, sadly, um, most people who post that kind of content are not going to be, their ideas aren't going to be changed. And in truth, in anything that is as provocative as politics or faith, you can never really change a person's mind with debate,
Mm-hmm.
particularly online debate, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to bring someone over to your side in something as existential as faith and politics
Mm,
until they have a lived experience with you. Like, you
right.
know, most people, you know, who come to, I use Christianity as an example because that is my personal experience. Most people who do become Christian don't necessarily don't become Christian because they went to you read something out of the Bible, or they went to a church and then the sermon was just like, oh my God. You know, some people have those kind of, you know, conversion experiences without a doubt. I'm not saying they don't happen, but the overwhelming majority of people who actually decide to convert to any faith, whether it's Christian or Muslim or whatever, they have a lived experience with someone of that faith,
Mm,
and that allows them to see that person differently, that they've never seen, where they've never seen that person before. And, you know, one analogy that I used was the movie Aliens. And in that movie with Sigourney Weaver, it was a sequel to the first one, there is this artificial person, this android named Bishop on a ship, and she hates artificial people because in the first movie, the artificial person, the android, led to everyone dying. Spoiler alert for the first movie, Alien. But in Aliens, so she has, throughout the whole movie, she has this hatred, for lack of a better word, for this android. And every time he tries to do anything to connect with her, she's like, stay away from me. Anyway, by the end of the movie, she realizes he's a good guy. He saves the day. They connect, and she comes in contact with him. And so I say that because, people who have a certain mindset about race or politics, their mind is already made up. A lot of times that mindset is from years of either indoctrination or years of how they were raised. And so there's nothing you're going to put online necessarily that's going to convince them, because we all look for things to confirm biases we have. We all do that. I do that. Everyone does that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone has a really strong feeling about Black Lives Matter and what it's about, you almost will never convince them, particularly if they are a Trump supporter. But even if they're not necessarily a Trump supporter, but maybe they're just they have, for whatever reason, they have this strong mindset about Black Lives Matter, until they actually have a number of Black friends whose pain they have felt, that will move them to really understand what that organization is about and what they're trying to do, so that giving the person the benefit of doubt, let's say there was some truth rooted in whatever propaganda that they're sharing. It says, well, Black Lives Matter, we're really this terrorist organization, and which is all crap. That's not what it was. But even if you gave them the benefit of doubt, that's what it is. For them, the real issue is, what is the real message behind Black Lives Matter? Regardless of whether or not the group Black Lives Matter is doing it well or not. Again, I use the example of Christianity. There are a lot of Christians who make Christianity look terrible. And if I weren't a Christian, in fact, a lot of reason why my personal faith has been evolving is because of how effed up some Christians are. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm not a Christian and I'm looking from the outside in, and I'm seeing hypocrisy, and I'm seeing violence, and I'm seeing all these terrible things, one of my refrains in the past, when I was more of a gung-ho, Christian, trying to get people to understand what Christianity was all about, I was always saying, hey, that's not really what Christianity is about. It's not about all these other negative things. This is what it's about. And it's very similar with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's like, if you have this feeling that Black Lives Matter is about terrorism and it's about anarchy and all this, I can say, I can understand why you have that feeling. Just like I can understand some people have that feeling about Christianity. Some people think Islam is about, bombing buildings and running airplanes into buildings. That's not what it's about. Can you get to the heart of what the movement is really about? And because if you can accept what the movement is really about, which is, being able to see the value in a group of people who for so many years have not had that value placed upon them, then it doesn't really matter what you call it. Like, if you can get on board with that, then come alongside this group of people who are trying to make that happen. And then so until a person actually gets into a relationship, that's never going to happen. And so my strategy when it comes to sharing this kind of information online is, I'm not trying to convince the person who I'm debating. I've given up on that. I have come to learn, particularly in the past few weeks, because a number of people have reached out to me personally through DMs based on my writing. There are lots of people who never comment, who are reading, who are kind of lurking. Mm-hmm. They're saying, what is one side saying? What is the other side saying? And those are people who are fertile ground. They're like maybe they're on the fence about white privilege. They can kind of see it, but they feel kind of uncomfortable because they're white, and they don't want to attribute themselves or be connected to Trump supporters. But then they do kind of still feel ooh, when you suggest that they have white privilege. And so those are the people that I am talking to when I'm sharing this kind of information. I'm always making sure that I'm, as much as possible, being civil with whoever I'm talking to, and that I'm providing resources. So for all the people who I know who are just lurking, who are on the fence about something, because if you're not on the fence, if you're on one side or the other, chances are whatever you share is not going to change anyone's mind. But there are enough people on that fence where if I can share something that opens their eyes, and I've had people come to me say, hey, Ron, the first time I started seeing your writing online, it kind of stung me, but I kept, you were cool. Like I noticed that you weren't, and then a year later, they've come around. They've said, you know what? I've read your stuff or read some of your stuff. My eyes are open. And I think those are the people that I'm talking to when I'm communicating online or when I'm sharing a video or whatnot, because I realize that if a person's not already in that fertile ground area, nothing I'm going to say is going to change another person's mind.
Yeah, that's powerful, Ron. Thank you for sharing that. That's kind of what I was thinking too. Like, you can't win an argument online. You cannot. No. There's no point. It just gets ugly and ick, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I was even thinking, like, hey, this is my understanding of it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have a conversation about it if you'd like to talk more. Because in a conversation, I think we can connect. And as you're saying, have some kind of a lived experience. It might not be the one they really need in order to have full empathy, but maybe it takes them a step closer to that. And because I can think of specific people in my life, I know I could have a conversation with them that de-escalates and actually lets us communicate something, because I'm willing to listen first, even to something that I'm like internally going, oh God, oh God, oh God, please.
Yeah.
No.
I feel the same way.
But okay, let me hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, are you willing to hear how I see it? And you don't have to agree. And I think that's huge. Like, as my friend and I were talking about earlier, if we can show up and stay in the same room, there's a lot of hope in that for me. There's a lot of hope in it. So thank you. That's really helpful. And, I felt a little self-indulgent asking you to share that here, but
and I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, it's so valuable to me, and also I think for anyone else who might hear this who's wondering, like, how do I deal with that? I mean, like, have the conversations, but have them, like, at least on the phone.
Yeah. And another way you can look at it is, those people who, whose minds you're not going to change, they are bringing up issues that other people are thinking that are afraid to say. And so you look at the really stubborn person whose mind you're not going to change. Look at them as a conduit for addressing questions those other people have that they're afraid to ask. So, now lately there's memes going around kind of talking about, George Floyd's criminal background. And there are horrible people like Candace Owens who are going out of her way to dehumanize this individual. And now, you're not going to change Candace Owens' mind, or people who think like her. But there are people who are thinking, but does he have a criminal background? And that opens up an opportunity for you to paint a picture, one, to address a couple issues. Like, one, even if he did, does it matter in this particular case in terms of how he was killed? No. Two, did you happen to know these things about him? Oh, how long ago did that thing happen? Oh, how has he been working in the community and with ministries to change his life around? Because they don't make a point to bring up that. And so, yes. Three, are there people that you currently edify who themselves have that history, right? And so, like, one example I saw today was that, Mount Rushmore has carved into the mountain people who owned slaves, people who whipped slaves. And so, do we want to bring up that background, or do we want to focus on the positive aspects of who they are, right? And so George Floyd is a person who doesn't have a perfect background. Do you want to focus on that, or do you want to focus on the fact that it's not that he's a martyr, it's that he represents a statistic and he represents a catalyst, I saw this guy talk about it today, of change. And that is what people are addressing. And so I think when these people bring up these horrible memes or these questions, that gives you an opportunity to answer questions other people might have who are afraid to ask. And if no one else in a particular thread addresses it, that gives you an opportunity to spread truth so that those people whose minds are fertile can be elevated.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
really powerful. And it's also good reinforcement for me that if I should ever get the wobbles about doing it,
Yeah.
like think of the people on the fence,
Yeah.
think of,
Totally.
and talk to them, I could be respectful. I don't need to fight it. I could do that somewhere else. If I need to do that, I can do it somewhere where it's okay to do it.
And it also makes you look better too, because if you're debating with someone and that person's looking like an a-hole and you're looking like a patient person who's offering cogent arguments and good data, even if you're not convincing the other person, outside people can see, okay, this person's being an a-hole, they're calling names, they're not presenting anything, which is usually the case. And this person over here is being patient, they're being kind, they're being respectful, and they are offering. It paints a picture of like who are the people on the fence going to be even more inclined to trust. This person who seems to be a terrible person, or this person who's patient and whatnot. And so there's that aspect of it too. Not only an opportunity to provide truth, but an opportunity to kind of display yourself in a way that elevates your thinking.
Cool. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up.
That was a lot, and I really appreciate. Woo! I'm like, this is what I don't see I know you were calling yourself like the Dark Knight, and I'm like, no, I don't think so. Like, there's so much hope in what you're saying.
Thank you.
And it's like, we have the anger, we have the shame, we have the whatever feelings we're having, and we can approach it this way in a way that builds connection and conversation, and we can change things and we can work together. And that's what I come away from, like the content that I see from you. And there's a place for the anger too. I'm like, I don't know, like we are humans and we have the whole spectrum of feelings. I don't have to be ruled by it, but hey, there it is. So I welcome the different flavors of it. And I think that when we do that, we can find a piece that isn't possible if we try to like get rid of one piece, one expression, one thing, like, cool. So, wow. So what was as we kind of wrap this up a bit, what's your biggest insight from this conversation today?
Oh, without a doubt, that idea of pivoting the kind of work, the kind of content work I want to do, and pivoting the kind of service, quote unquote, that I want to provide, and putting effort into that because it aligns with what I'm more passionate about doing, and it is something that can be both a source of fulfillment and revenue as well too, as I approach that. And so that's definitely the biggest insight for me.
And thank you so much for bringing that, Ron, because I'm so excited about it. Like, I could really feel it as we were talking, and I'm like, please do this, please do.
That's so cool. I know.
And it'll, I could just feel the momentum behind it.
I'm genuinely excited about the idea, and it's funny that I never thought of it. And I'm going to, after I finish the book, do more research on like what that might look like. And I'll definitely, you'll be seeing it. So I'll definitely be giving you an update on, hey.
Yeah, please, show me the stuff. I want to support you, really.
I appreciate it.
On multiple levels. I don't know. It just feels like, it feels good,
Yeah, it does.
and I feel like people are in front of me for a reason. I notice them for a reason. And so like, I don't need to know what it is, but like, okay, there. And so, I'm like, yes, I'm on board.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you.
So where can people find you? Where's the best place to connect with you?
I would say I would want to send people to my book, because that is where I do, like, from there, there's links to my writing on Medium. And so, also my writing on Medium is another place, but, with regard to my book, it's just DND, like D, letter N, D, book.com, dndbook.com. for Dungeons and Durags.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Medium, I'm just at Ron Dawson. So medium.com/the @Ron Dawson.
Okay, awesome. I will send them. Thank you so much, Ron, again, for
Thank
taking this
you.
time with me.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for your insight.
Hey, thanks for joining me for today's Wildspire conversation. If you'd like to receive a weekly Wild Creation email from me filled with more inspiring stories, marketing experiments, playful questions, new podcast episodes, videos and freebies, and anything else I'm playing with, go to theawakenedbusiness.com/wild creation. Until next time, may you know yourself as the gorgeous wild creation you are.